Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Now, if you're just tuning in, you're going to need to stop and go back and watch the first 3 parts of What If Ash Caught Latias. Because at the end of the third one, I gave you guys an option. I put a poll out on the community tab that would give you a choice. Does Ash continue his journey into Sinnoh? Or does Ash choose to become a Frontier Brain? If you're watching this one, it's Ash chose to become a Frontier Brain. Now, depending on where you're watching it, is going to determine how the poll went. If you're watching it currently on YouTube, that means that you guys voted for Ash to become a Frontier Brain. And it won. But if you're watching it on Patreon, that means that you guys have exclusive access to this video for the time being. Which means that this content will only be for your eyes. So enjoy. But anyway, we're picking back up with Ash, and he decides that he wants to become a Frontier Brain. Now, when this happens, there really isn't a set of rules that dictates how one goes about becoming a Frontier Brain. Now, Scott offered this chance to Ash, which he's going to gladly accept in this timeline. But Scott is going to throw in a condition. Ash will not be a Frontier Brain of the Kanto region. You see, he tells Ash that he's trying to set up the battle frontier in each of the regions. Now, he has one in Kanto, and he's also in the process of setting one up in the region called Sinnoh. But he needs someone that can set up a battle frontier in another region. Ash, quite curious to this, asks which region it is. Scott says, well, I'm pretty sure it's a region that you've been to, considering you competed in the Silver Conference. The Johto region. Johto? This piques Ash's interest. He asks Scott what he means by this. Scott tells him, listen Ash, I want to set up a battle frontier in the Johto region. And considering you've accepted my offer to become a Frontier Brain, I would like you to be the ambassador for it. I'm going to put you in charge of becoming the first brain of the region. You can set up your facility wherever you want in the region, but it has to be in Johto. I'm also going to charge you with finding the strong trainers. Normally, I would do this myself, but I need to oversee the development of the battle frontier inside of the Sinnoh region. So for the time being, I'm going to leave it to you. But that doesn't mean that your brains that you choose will go untested. So do you accept this offer? Ash, without hesitation, accepts, knowing full well the burden that's been placed on him. Brandon then asks if Ash feels like he'll need help with this, because after all, he was the one responsible for setting up the Kanto battle frontier. He was the one who sought out all of the trainers. Beginning to feel the pressure, Ash withers a little bit, but tells Brandon no. He has a couple of ideas. Scott then chimes in. Ash, including your battle facility, you're going to have 5 other ones, for a total of 6, in order for it to be counted as a battle frontier in my eyes. So, do you have any ideas on trainers you may want to bring in? Ash, without hesitation, oh, don't worry. I know a couple of trainers out in Johto, and I think this might be right up their alley. So, with that, Ash parts ways from the battle frontier and the battle pyramid, heading back to his home of Pallet Town. This is where we're going to see a major divergence in the timeline. May and Max are going to head back to Hoenn, and Brock, well, he's going to go back to Pewter City. This is going to be a permanent separation for him and Ash from this point forward. Brock realizes that Ash is in the middle of growing up, and this is the next stage in his Pokemon career. So with that being said, he's decided that he is going to go on and become a Pokemon breeder like he always wanted. So he's choosing to head home so he can plan out the next stage of his life. After a very emotional goodbye between the 4 friends, they all part ways, with Ash arriving back in Pallet Town. Now, here's something very important that we're going to have to look at. Ash is now a champion of the battle frontier, and at the end of his battle with Brandon, Charizard, Squirtle, and Bulbasaur all went their separate ways again. So what would Ash's team look like going into this new battle frontier? Well, I think for starters, we can include Pikachu here. It's his ace. It's not going anywhere. Secondly, of course, the namesake of the What If, Latias. This is going to be a huge advantage because now that they're back in the Johto region, Latias can kind of just hang out at home and come whenever Ash calls Latias, whenever he needs it. But for the time being, it's going to stay on his party. But then, who else could Ash take? Well, I think that the only other fully evolved starter is kind of a no-brain candidate, Sceptile. It's really been Ash's other powerhouse for the Hoenn region and the Battle Frontier, so this is a prime candidate for Ash to have on his team. And with that, who else could we possibly include? Well, after giving this much thought, I think that here we're going to include Donphan, just for the time being. And the reason why I say that is because it didn't really get much time to shine in the Johto region. And yeah, it got its comeback in the Battle Frontier, but it needs just a little bit more. So with that being said, Ash is heading back to Johto, and he has his work cut out. Because while he has a general idea of where most of these trainers are, some of them are wandering. So he's going to have to do a little wandering of his own. But not to worry. The first trainer is relatively easy to find because he's a candidate at a certain dojo, and Ash knows that his master was once considered on level with the Elite Four. This candidate is going to be Shingo. Shingo was one of the first major opponents that Ash battled with Heracross, and Heracross got his first win here. So I think that Shingo, having a sensei that's as strong as the Elite Four in Muramasa, I think that he would be a prime candidate. But don't get too excited, because we're not going to be able to move on just yet. You see, Ash is going to have to show up, and he's going to have to explain to Shingo what exactly the Battle Frontier is. And he's going to have to convince Shingo why he should join. Now, Shingo isn't exactly a young, dumb kid. After all, he was undefeated until Ash served him a hyping pot of humility with his Heracross. So, Shingo is going to want to have to test Ash's abilities, because Shingo's no slouch. He's been training this entire time before Ash showed up. And one of the things that he's been itching for, especially Scizor, is a rematch. So the question is, would Ash want to give him this? Well, I think that Ash would have to give Shingo this. Because in the end, if Ash wants to prove that the Battle Frontier is something that Shingo should be part of, he's going to have to beat him. Now, where would we go with the battle from here? Well, I think that we could make this a 2-on-2. And it would obviously have Shingo Scizor, and we'd have to give him another Pokemon. After thinking about this, I feel Shingo is kind of the technical type of battler. Not as extreme as Paul, but he is the type of person that values strategy more than anything. And he's really come into his own since he's put down the laptop and actually started training with his Pokemon. Now, the question is, what other Pokemon could be technical? Well, after considering a lot of other Pokemon, I feel like the one Pokemon that could offset Scizor in its battle style being offensive and very speedy would actually be Shuckle, offering slow defense. And we would see this in the battle. Now, we know that Pikachu didn't battle Shingo in the original outing, but in this one, Ash would obviously go with his ace against this new Shuckle. Unfortunately, things wouldn't go too well for Ash. You see, that whole technical battle style of Shingo's really comes back because he's able to outlast Pikachu and lure it into a false sense of security, allowing his Shuckle to knock it out with really little to no effort. This kind of sets Ash on tilt and is kind of causing Shingo to doubt the validity of Ash's claim about this Battle Frontier being a challenge above challenges. But things change when Ash resorts to Old Faithful, Latias. And things quickly turn when Latias overpowers Shuckle just with its legendary status and manages to knock it out. This leaves the Steel Bug-type Scizor. Now, by all intents and purposes, Scizor has a lot of advantage here. The Bug-type is strong against the Psychic-type, and Steel is resistant to it. And Shingo really uses this to his advantage. He's been able to hone his skills against other types like this, and I really think it's going to come to show in this battle, pushing Latias to the edge. But in the end, I still think that Latias would get the win here, allowing Ash to convince Shingo of the battle frontier and the possibilities. Shingo does have a couple of questions, like exactly what does he do? Well, Ash tells him that he is allowed to set up his own facility, and he can choose to run it any way he wants. Any type of battling he can think of, which really appeases the Shingo, because in his recent outings and training, he's kind of really liked to take a technical approach to things, testing how well the strategies of his opponents play out. Kind of similar to Tucker, the Domes. So Shingo would agree to join. And with the permission of his master, the dojo that they reside in would become the first facility of the Johto Battle Frontier. Now, for the symbol, what could we really call it? Tucker's is known as the Tactics symbol, which I love that name. Honestly, I feel like it would fit Shingo as well. There is one other name that I think fits well with Shingo here. We'll call it the Analytic symbol. And the reason for it harks back to Shingo's days on the computer. He overanalyzed everything, but that is not a negative trait when it comes to Pokemon battles. The ability to analyze things on the fly is what allows trainers to gain the edge in battle. Shingo would really want to test that, so the Analytic symbol is where we were going to place this. Now, with Ash setting up his first facility, he's feeling pretty good about himself. The problem is, he really only has an actual location on his second person that he has in mind. And it's going to be a while until it gets there, because it's in between Equitique and Olivine City. But luckily for him, on the way there, he actually runs into one of the people that he was thinking about. Miki, the trainer with the Skarmory. She was one of the first that crossed his mind because of her mastery of the Steel type. Now with Miki, she was a little bit less inclined to join than Shingo was. Shingo just wanted to have Ash prove himself, to where Miki, more along the lines of, is afraid that it's going to interfere with her ability to train. One of the things that she's really big on is being able to overcome the weaknesses of her Pokemon. And I think this would play out. Now, her and Ash would still have to have a battle, which I think this time we can just make it a one-on-one, with her wanting to test her Skarmory, with it being her ace, against Ash. Last time, he used Cyndaquil, and he won because of the whole type advantage. But this time, I think he would want to go with the type disadvantage, just to prove that Miki's thought process is perfect for the battle frontier. So, he chooses to go Sceptile. Now, the battle would be a little bit on the back foot for Ash. Sceptile, even though he is the ace of Hoenn, is still at a huge disadvantage when you throw in Steel on top of the Flying type. Luckily for Ash though, its Leaf Blades proved to be the perfect counter to Skarmory's Steel Wing, allowing it to fend it off and provide a good defense. In the end, Sceptile would end up activating its Overgrow, allowing it to take down Skarmory. This would inevitably convince Miki to join the ranks of the Battle Frontier Brains for the Johto region. Now, this would have to be the same thing that he established with Shingo. Where is she going to set up the facility? Well, I think this actually is perfect for Miki, because she's not really the type of person to want to stay in one place, not really travel, but she likes to test herself in the elements, which means that really a mountainous / forest region is where she would want to set up. Kind of like Spencer of the Kanto Battle Frontier. She would like to be exposed to the elements for her adaptability. You know what? That's a great name. Her symbol will be called the Adaptability symbol, which means now Ash has 2 of the 6 brains needed, which he's making pretty good time. He's only been at it about a month or so. Unfortunately, there still is the problem of his other 3 brains, which, once again, he only has a hard lock on one of them. But don't worry, that one that he still knows is his primary destination for the time being. Now, Ash has been traveling for a while, and he only still has 4 Pokemon with him, being Pikachu, Latias, Donphan, and Sceptile. So, I think it's time that we got the chance to add a new Mon to Ash's roster. So, the question is, what Mon could we reasonably add? I mean, Johto isn't really the biggest Pokédex, and a lot of the Pokemon that it has really isn't super powerful. Well, I do have one in mind, because Ash has to stop off in Equitique City, and while he's there, he gets to meet an old acquaintance in Morty. And the reason for him meeting with Morty is because he's inquiring about one of the people that Morty knows all too well. A strong trainer that is consistently chasing legends. Eugene. While Morty hasn't seen Eugene in a few months, he does know that Eugene is usually relatively close to wherever the legendary beasts are. Problem is, they haven't been spotted in a while. So, that kinda is a dead end on the information. But Ash, not wanting to waste his trip to Equitique City, decides to stop by the burned tower. He wants to take a look at that mural of Ho-Oh again, kind of as a reminder of what he's doing. To be a Pokemon Master, and now his new task to set up the battle frontier. Luckily for him though, this is where he's going to encounter his next Pokemon, because in the shadows of the burned tower, a lot of ghost Pokemon like to hang out. And here, I think it would be fun to give Ash the only ghost type of the Johto region, Mischievous. And the reason why I say that I think it would be fun is because in this version, Ash is going to completely miss Sinnoh. But with Ash having Mischievous, this would allow him to get one of Sinnoh's new Mons. So with that, Ash is going to move on, and he's going to hit his 3rd battle facility that he has in mind. I don't think there has to be too much invested into Mischievous. I believe that this Pokemon would be of the mischievous sort, just like its name suggests, liking to play tricks on people that wander into its territory of the burned tower. And this is where Ash and Pikachu would encounter it. Now, of course, there would be a battle that plays out, and in the end, Ash would capture it, adding it to his team. So, with that, he now has 5 members of his Johto squad. So, they can move on to the next person that Ash has in mind. That person just so happens to be Shakuza, the fighting type Hitmontop wielder. Ash had the chance to battle her with Bulbasaur in the original anime. This still happened in this timeline. Bulbasaur proved to be invaluable in getting her to understand that she can't be as lackadaisical as she normally was. Now, while that being said, she still is kind of young, but her grandfather has been mentoring her since Ash left. And not to mention the fact that her Hitmontop has gained a lot of abilities and new moves. And because Ash is now back, she would want to test her former rival, who helped her secure the spot of Shihan of her dojo. Now, the question is, has she gained other Pokemon besides Hitmontop? And I have a feeling that yeah, she would. One of the most notable ones that I feel like would fit her style would be a Meditite. So I feel like Meditite and Hitmontop would be among other members on her team. Now, of course, she's going to want to test Ash, and she's going to want to do it in a 2-on-2 here. So Meditite and Hitmontop would be her choices. Ash, however, doesn't have Bulbasaur here. He's still at Professor Oak's lab. But that's okay, because now Ash has Mischievous, and Mischievous would be his choice against Meditite. Unfortunately, though, it's still weak at battling, and Meditite makes quick work of it. And it kind of shows, kind of hurting Mischievous a little bit. But Ash is able to quickly change this up when he sends in Donphan. Donphan evens out the score and levels the meta type. Then it has to go up against Hitmontop. Now, the reason why I think Ash would use Donphan here is because he knew that Hitmontop was coming, and Donphan's rollout abilities are very similar to Hitmontop's triple kick. And we would see an epic clash between these two as they burn rubber against each other, if you will. But in the end, I think Ash would still get the win, solidifying that he's still stronger. But after that, Shakuza would have a conversation with Ash about what the battle frontier is, and Ash would go on to explain to her about how they're strong trainers who are Elite 4 level status. Now, Shakuza is kind of intimidated by this. She's nowhere near Elite 4 level. I mean, she just battled with Bruno last week and, got the floor wiped with her. But her grandfather tells her not to waver. This is a unique opportunity that doesn't come around that often. This is the perfect time for her to accept it. She's been growing a lot, and if she wavers in her own confidence at the request of something like this, then it could stunt her growth. While Shakuza is still hesitant to take the role, with the urging of Ash and her grandfather, she eventually accepts. Now, with that being said, the question is, what will we name her symbol? Well, I think that's actually a very easy name to give, because when we see her in her first act, she's kind of using a dance style of battling to teach the other students of the dojo. So we could call her symbol the rhythm symbol, which makes sense when you think about it with Hitmontop, because it really needs to have a good balance and a good rhythm in order to execute some of the attacks that it has, like triple kick and rolling kick, stuff like that. So we're going to go with that. Now, with that being said, Ash has locked in 3 out of the 6 members that he's supposed to have. But now, where do we go from here? There's still 2 members. We know that Eugene is one of them. Problem is, nobody knows where he is. But Ash then gets wind of something new that's opened up in Cianwood City. Apparently, a Safari Zone has opened, and Pokemon from other regions can be found there. So Ash decides to head out to Cianwood to check out this new Safari Zone. Little does he know, Scott has finished up his journeys in the Sinnoh region with the Battle Frontier, and has made his way to Johto. Now he's going through and checking out some of these candidates that Ash has picked, but we'll get back to that later. Anyway, Ash arrives in Cianwood City, meets up with Chuck, gets a nice rematch, gets to test his skills against the plump battler, and once again wipes the floor with him. Nothing too special here. Latias does get its chance to get a little bit of revenge because it lost in the last time they fought, but Ash also decides to use Mr. Vis here. Now, Mr. Vis proves to be quite capable because Ash has been working with it for a little while, even though it does lose in the first match. But after all said and done, Chuck points Ash in the way of the new Safari Zone. Now this is going to be huge, because the Safari Zone offers Pokemon from all across the Pokemon world. And in Johto specifically, he gets access to Pokemon that appear in the first 4 generations. Now, what could actually be caught here that's important? Well, I think here we could roll in Riolu, so that way Ash finally has a viable fighting type to rely on. Now this would bring Ash's current Frontier Brain team to 6 finally. Now, how Ash could meet this Riolu, I think while he's wandering the Safari Zone, he encounters a strange force that he remembers from his original journey into Johto. A mythical entity on a body of water, something that he remembers from his past. This in turn would cause a Riolu to emerge, because it too has been chasing down this entity, sensing its aura. Because being in the Safari Zone, Riolu has kind of made this area its territory. While it doesn't really know if this Pokemon is a threat, it's rather be safe than sorry. In the end, Ash would end up having to stop Riolu from attacking this entity, because Ash knows that it's not a threat, because of his history with Suicune. This would actually prompt the next person that Ash has been looking for, Eugene. Eugene has been hot on the tail of Suicune as of late, trying to find out where it's been. And lately, it's made its home in the Savari Zone. So after Ash goes through a whole battling montage trying to prevent Riolu from attacking it, and eventually just using Pikachu to weaken it enough to where he can catch it, he then gets his chance to approach Eugene, who Ash has come to find out has befriended Suicune. And the reason why Suicune is in the Savari Zone is because Eugene has brought it here to protect it from the Iron Mask Marauder, who was seeking it out after the events of the Pokemon Forever movie. So Suicune has made its home here, and it doesn't plan on leaving anytime soon. Although it does still go out into the world every now and then for short periods of time. This is where the conversation between Ash and Eugene would happen. Ash does his best to try and convince Eugene that he should join the battle frontier of the Johto region. The problem is, Eugene doesn't see any need to join the battle frontier. You see, he's always been very much of an independent trainer. And he's also not interested in being locked down to one place, because he's consistently traveling, researching the legends of the Johto region. So he doesn't think that it would be in his best interest, or Suicune's, for him to set up a facility in the middle of the Savari Zone. While Ash can agree with that, he does make the argument that there is a frontier brain in Kanto that doesn't really stay locked into one place. He moves around at his own free will. This does interest Eugene a little bit, but he tells Ash he's going to need time, because it's not something that he thinks he can just say yes to. Ash agrees, and he's okay with this answer. He tells Eugene he will be in contact. So with his Riolu firmly in the grasp, and now have a team of 6 for his frontier team, he decides to head out. Now, there's one more person that he has to seek. Unfortunately, he has no idea where she is. So he decides to hop a boat bound from Cianwood City back to Goldenrod. And the reason for it is because this is the hub of the Johto region. It's the busiest city. So if anybody may know where this person is, it would be here. Fortunately for Ash, he's not going to have to wait long. And the reason for it is because the person he's been seeking is actually getting ready to board the boat he's leaving. Casey, his old former rival of the Johto region. These two have some history. Mainly her obsession with the Electabuzz baseball team. But we're not going to get into that right now. Ash is actually happy to see her, because he knows that even though she's still young, she has just as much potential as he does, and he's curious to see her growth. Being the fact that Casey hasn't seen Ash in such a long time, she actually neglects her boat ride and ends up missing it. But that's okay with her, because she's going to get to have a battle with Ash right here on the docks. So the two decide to have a 3-on-3 contest, winner take all. Ash is excited about this. He's quite eager to see how much she's grown. Casey, on the other hand, has something to prove, because she's still a little bit sore about that time that Charizard just, one-shotted her whole team. But that's in the past, and she wants to prove to Ash that she has what it takes to beat him, not knowing of his accomplishments since the last time they fought. Now, with the start of this battle, I think we would see the return of an old friend, her Electabuzz, who's evolved from an Elekid. Now, Ash would instinctively go with Pikachu here, just to test the typings and who was better. Fortunately for Ash, Pikachu has more experience, and it quickly one-shots the Oni. So this leaves Casey with some other choices to make. Luckily for her, she has her ever-faithful Meganium, and she chooses to send this out to counter Pikachu's electricity. And it works because the typing disadvantage that Pikachu's at allows Meganium to overpower it, wrapping it up with things like Vine Whip and sealing the deal with a Solar Beam. This then prompts Ash to send in his second Pokemon, which in this case, Ash is going to want to test typing against typing again with Sceptile. This is a much more even fight. Sceptile, however, does possess a slight advantage, just because, this is Ash, and his ability to adapt to things is one of his strongest suits. Using a combination of Leaf Blade to ward off its Vine Whip and its new move that Ash has been working with, Frenzy Plant, it allows Ash to overpower Meganium and Casey to take the win of the second match. Things aren't looking too good for Casey here, and Ash is starting to wonder if he should reconsider his offer that he wants to make her. But he doesn't have to wait long for Casey's next choice, as she sends in a Pokemon that Ash is all too familiar with. The one that he gave her, Beedrill. Ash chooses to leave in Sceptile, thinking that this is a joke. But little does he know, this Beedrill is actually very sentimental to Casey, because Ash gave it to her. And due to that, she has spent quite the amount of time working with it. And it quickly shows when it's able to overpower Sceptile and one-shot it with a Poison Sting. The power of this thing is extreme, and Ash can see that. So he has to make a choice. Here, he decides to go with Latias again, showing Casey that he has indeed upgraded his game. Now, would Beedrill be able to compete with Latias? I think in the game setting, yes, it could even get a win. Here in the anime, I think Latias' overwhelming stat base would just one-shot Beedrill, and this would clinch the match for Ash. However, this wouldn't really affect the outcome. I think Ash would still make the offer to Casey, because he knows of her ability to improve. She's shown it time and time again. Casey is actually intrigued by this. She competed in the Johto League and she got the opportunity to battle in it. She didn't do as well as Ash in the first place, but she's been looking for something to help get her to the next level. And being this so-called frontier brain could be just the thing she needs to do so. With that, Ash now has 4 out of the 5 members he needed to be frontier brains. It's at this point that Ash is approached by the one person who's been lurking in the backgrounds, Scott. He's been testing Ash's frontier brains that he's reported back to him, and he has a couple of concerns. The first thing is the battle that he saw with Casey. Ash, she looks a little green. Are you sure she's somebody that we should make a frontier brain? Remember, they're supposed to be Elite 4 level. Ash looks at Scott and says one thing. That's true, but Casey reminds me a lot of myself. She doesn't give up, and she keeps pushing forward. And with that type of mentality, I think she'll be on my level in no time. Is that so, Ash? Okay, Casey, would you want to accept a spot in the battle frontier? Casey actually says yes, but Scott tells her she's going to be reduced to the weakest of the frontier brains for the time being, which is a little bit of a motivation killer, but not much. Then we have to figure out what exactly Casey's frontier symbol would be. Well, I think this one's a little bit more difficult than the other ones, because Casey is just a carbon copy of Ash. I mean, we could call it the stubborn symbol, but I don't think that really suits it. However, I do think that there's one thing that we could call it that kind of fits. The heart symbol. And I'm not talking about the shape. I'm talking about the purpose. No matter what happens, she gives her all. She doesn't hold back. She's got the heart. And that's what Ash sees in her. And Scott can kind of see it as well. So he grants the request. As far as the other frontier brains, Scott has verified all of them, and he's actually quite impressed with Ash's choices. However, they're still not quite at the level that he was hoping. So he does charge Ash with the task of going through and consistently checking up on them, making sure that they are improving. There is, however, one problem. Ash is still a brain short. Ash sighs, telling Scott that yeah, he did have someone in mind, but he's not really sure if they're going to take this position. Luckily for Ash and the convenience of plot, they get their answer right then and there, when Eugene appears out of nowhere with his Alakazam teleporting in. He tells Ash that he is going to accept his position. Even though he doesn't like the thought of being tied down, the fact that he may get to travel like this Brandon person is intriguing with him. That means that he can still do the things that he likes while being able to fulfill his responsibilities as this frontier brain. Scott, however, is a little unconvinced, and he turns to Ash. So this is supposed to be your frontier brain that you chose? I've never even heard of this Eugene fellow. Telling him that he met him through the gym leader Morty, Ash tries to convince Scott, but Scott is a little reluctant, telling Ash that if he wishes to convince him, they're going to have a battle. This is no problem to Ash, turning to Eugene, telling him, these are the stipulations. Everybody that I've chosen to be a brain, I've battled with. So, if you want to be a frontier brain, you have to battle with me. Eugene has no problem with this, asking for a 2-on-2 match. Ash is excited about this. Unfortunately, though, he's used both Pikachu, Latias, and Sceptile. So, that's going to leave him a little light on some options, but that's okay, because he still has 3 more members to go. But this could come back to haunt him. So, Ash and Eugene square off, and Eugene, already having his Alakazam out, decides to lead with it. Ash decides to go with Donphan, and the battle gets underway. Now, Donphan is very powerful, but it's kind of a one-trick pony. It rolls really fast and, charges at things and hits very hard. However, Alakazam, with its ability to teleport and its psychic abilities, is able to easily maneuver around this, taking the battle with relatively no damage, leaving Ash with just one choice. So, he's got his Mischievous, and he's got Riolu. Riolu still hasn't quite come around to Ash, and he hasn't really used it in a lot of battles. But Mischievous, on the other hand, has proven to be quite capable of taking on opponents. So, Ash decides to go with his Ghost type. Mischievous proves that it has what it takes to stand up to Alakazam, and eventually even evades one of its Psychic type attacks to land a Shadow Ball from behind, knocking it out. This intrigues Eugene. He's never seen somebody wield a Ghost type like Ash does. So, he decides to use his own Ghost type with Haunter. Haunter emerges from its ball, and it's kind of menacing, intimidating its opponent Mischievous a little bit, but Ash tells it to stand strong. They can do this. The battle starts off, and it quickly becomes apparent that Haunter has the advantage, mainly because of its evolution. It just has more power than Mischievous, but the fact that Mischievous had to battle really isn't working well in Ash's favor either. But that's okay though, because Mischievous, one thing it does have is endurance, and it pushes Haunter to the edge. Unfortunately though, Eugene proves that he is still a very well-rounded trainer because he is able to knock out Mischievous, ending the battle, and being the first person that Ash has chosen to actually defeat the Battle Frontier champion. This convinces Scott that Eugene is somebody he wants as a Frontier brain. Eugene is somebody that is actually at Elite 4 level, and this is something that's going to be desperately needed because he does not want the Johto Battle Frontier to be a joke. So with that, Eugene accepts Ash's invitation to become a Battle Frontier. Now the question is, what kind of symbol would he use? Well, I actually think that this is a little bit simpler than most people may think. Eugene is a very straightforward person. All he cares about is myths and legends. And I think the name is right there. The myth symbol, because of his occupation. So Eugene would end up being a traveling Frontier brain, and the others would be stationed relatively around where Ash found him. Casey taking up a position just north of Goldenrod City in a place called the Pokeathlon Dome, which proves to be advantageous for Ash because it's here where he gets a chance to compete at some of these contests. He ends up coming across an item that helps him out, the Dust Stone. And when he uses it on his Mischievous, it manages to evolve into a Mismagius, giving Ash his first fully evolved Ghost type in the series. Now comes the problem of Ash's Riolu, and where Ash will set up his Frontier facility. Well, I think actually this is something that we can head over to Blackthorn City for. And the reason why I say that is because majority of the Battle Frontier facilities for Johto we have located in the western half. Why not balance it out a little bit by putting this one in the eastern half? And not only that, but I think the Dragon's Den would be the perfect place for Ash and Riolu to train. And this in turn will allow Ash to use the Dragon's Den as his battle facility. And I also think that this would allow Ash to establish himself as possibly the strongest trainer that's not part of the league in the Johto region. And this would also bring into question, what would we call his symbol? I think that this would be called the beginning symbol. And the reason why I say that is because after Ash reflects on all of his journeys up until this point, one thing has been made clear to him. Even though a journey comes to an end, a new one will always begin. And at this point, Ash would have established himself as the strongest Frontier Brain. After a rematch with Eugene, of course, where his new Mismagius and Lucario would prove to be the aces in that, allowing him to cement himself. And with that, we would see Latias actually go back to Altamira to kind of just live there until Ash needs it again. And Ash would actually end up filling Latias' spot on his team with a certain fire type that's been training in the Johto region, allowing Charizard to come back on his team full time. And that's it. That would be the end of Ash's journey if he had caught in Latias and chose to become a Frontier Brain. At this point, he would just wait for the next challenger to challenge his battle facility. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this iteration of What If Ash Caught Latias, because it was kind of interesting not really having a clear path. Ash isn't battling gyms this time. He actually has to be the one to set things up. So thinking about trainers that Ash had faced in the Johto region was kind of a unique way to go through things. And not only that, but giving Ash new Pokemon that he could actually catch in the Johto region that would allow him to evolve into some Sinnomons, because let's be honest, him becoming a Frontier Brain in the Johto region means that all of his Sinnoh adventures would never really happen. So why not let him get some Pokemon that he either caught really late or that he never got a chance to catch at all? But anyway, how did you guys feel about this? Let me know in the comments down below. Do you like Ash's journey to set up the Johto Battle Frontier? Do you like the team that he had at the end of his Frontier run? And do you think there should have been any other changes? And also, how do you feel about this What If overall to the end of this part? Let me know, because I'm quite curious. And don't forget to follow me on my other platforms. And if you're watching this on YouTube, join me on Patreon, because only $5 a month, you can get up to a week's early access to all of my content that is not a What If Mini. But anyway, now it's time to sign out the video the best way we know how, by thanking the sponsors, the patrons. Silverheart Soul, Robert, Vegito Gaming 78, Andrew McCartney, Holosiv, Julian Rodriguez, Ruben Watson, Lord Explosion Murder, Assassin 139, Flyer 943, Shadow Dragon, Cayman Knight, Kevin Atron, Drax, Truevolt, Adrian Carr, Dino King, Dalen Silva, Fox King, Dalion Petit, Warney Taylor, Plus Ultraman, Mega Mike Logan, Team Valor, Kendall Green, Earth Dragon, John Larson, and Josh Van Meplin. Thank you all very much for watching the video, and I will see you in the next one.